Welcome back. It is the final episode of Let's Play Mega Man X3. Dr. Doppler's laboratory has been revealed to us. It's now time to go after Doppler and Sigma. By the way, I didn't mention in the previous video that pressing the X logo after getting the head upgrade doesn't do anything for the text that pops up for all the stages, unfortunately. We've collected everything except for the pink enhancement capsules. But before we actually move on to Doppler's Fortress, we need to go ahead and go over some housekeeping, which is going to take a few minutes because there's a lot of stuff, because Mega Man X3 is a big game with lots of stuff to it. First off, we're going to be showing off the Acid Burst that we got from Toxic Seahorse. Toxic Seahorse is a special weapon. You're noticing already something strange happening with every enemy that I defeat, that they're all dropping weapon energy. We'll get to that a little bit more in just a moment, but first, this is the charged version of the Acid Burst. What it looks like, it's basically the charged attack that Toxic Seahorse is doing at the end of his fight. We have a ride armor platform here that we didn't interact with the first time we came into Blast Hornet's stage. Now it's time to interact with it and get access to the pink enhancement capsule in the stage, the last of the 4 pink enhancement capsules. This one is going to be for the head part. It's a very interesting upgrade. You may want to get this one if you had to pick between one of the 4. This is one maybe to get. Ultimately, I think the body upgrade is better, and the leg upgrade even is a little bit better, by functionality and cool factor, but this one is pretty interesting. Basically, you stand still and you heal, and you have to stand perfectly still. You can't be switching your weapons with toggles. You can't move over an inch. You can't do anything. You can't interact with the controller at all, and you're standing still without interacting with the controller at all. As you'll see when we speed up in just a moment, this head enhancement is going to allow us to heal. So I'm showing off right now that I have 0 sub-tanks filled up, and now I am putting up a timer to show exactly how long it takes for the head part to fill up all of your sub-tanks. It takes less time than you would think, but more than you would want. But for situations like being in the last stage and you don't want to get a game over and you want to fill up all your sub-tanks, this is a pretty decent way of getting your health back. Not as decent as using Blizzard Buffalo's weapon and just killing enemies and getting health pellets back that way. Ultimately, I think that way is superior to get your health back, but if you want to literally stand around and get a reward for literally standing around and doing nothing, then standing in place, not interacting with the controller at all, not even to switch weapons, will allow you to use the head enhancement upgrade to fill up all of your sub-tanks. That's not the only thing that it does. We're going to see the other more obvious effect that it does, but that is a very, very good secondary effect for the head enhancement upgrade, and why you may want to have it. But just standing in place when you have less than full health, the head enhancement upgrade will of course heal you one little bar of health at a time for every few seconds that pass, as we'll see in effect right now. There's one, and then you wait a little bit longer, and there's the other one, at last. Now, we got this head enhancement upgrade by using the Hawk ride armor, but it is not the only ride armor you can use. In fact, you can use any of the ride armors except for the frog one. The frog one is awful outside of water, but any of the other 3 can be used, including the new kangaroo ride armor that we got from Toxic Seahorse's stage, which is a version of the ride armor that Vile used against us in the Secret Factory stage. Charge it up and do a nice little punch like that. It's basically a slightly nerfed version of the X2 armor, but you can make a big jump with it and then jump off of the armor and then make it to where the enhancement capsule is. You could also technically maybe use the leg enhancement capsule, the double air dash, to get up there too, but if you're using the double air dash, that means you already have an enhancement upgrade and you can't actually collect the capsule that's up there. Anyway, right now we're seeing Toxic Seahorse's weapon in action right now, specifically its secondary effect. Just like how Blizzard Buffalo's special weapon is able to grant you health pellets for every single enemy that you defeat, for most every single enemy you defeat, you get health pellets. With Toxic Seahorse's weapon, you get special weapon energy for every single enemy that you kill. So if you were looking to fill up on special weapon energy, defeat them with Toxic Seahorse's weapon. Toxic Seahorse is also the weakness for the Shuriken hologram that we saw here. Here I'm showing off just a little bit more housekeeping, that 0 can't be brought into mini-boss fights that you have already started. That's going to be relevant for something in Doppler's laboratory. Just keep in mind that 0 cannot be used for... cannot be called in during mini-boss fights that have already started, similar to Nightmare Police fights and boss battles and all that stuff. Zero's very limited. Here I'm showing off that the crates in Blast Hornet stage can be destroyed with various other weapons, including Crushed Crawfish and Triad Thunder, but only Tunnel Rhino can destroy the wall that leads you to the right armor. So that, this just goes back to what I was talking about in the previous video, how you have to use Tunnel Rhino's weapon to get to the right armor. Now we're jumping back over to Tunnel Rhino's stage and fighting the Hell Crusher, because Hell Crusher is also weak to Crushed Crawfish. We saw in the previous video it was weak to Triad Thunder. Now we're looking at its other weakness, which is Crushed Crawfish. Straightforward enough, I think. Now jumping back over to Toxic Seahorse's stage, we're going to show off what happens when you use a ride armor that is not the frog in the water. So here I'm just using Chimera, but this applies for the other two, and you're going to see it for the other two as well. Basically, any ride armor that isn't frog that goes into the water is automatically destroyed. It short circuits, you can't do anything in it, and it blows up after. It loses all its health after a few seconds, and then after a few more seconds, it will, in fact, blow up. And when a ride armor is destroyed, if you go back to the ride armor platform, we talked about how you can switch your ride armors at will if it despawns, or if you go back to the ride armor platform with a ride armor. But if it's destroyed, if it loses all its health and blows up, then when you go back to a ride armor platform, you cannot use that platform again to call in another ride armor. Here I'm showing off this top path cannot be traversed without the frog ride armor. I'm dashing with all my might, but those fans that I blew up in the previous video in this stage just keep pushing you back, and you can't actually interact with them. Here I'm showing off the other armors also not being able to be used underwater. Now we're moving on to the Toxic Seahorse mini boss. We saw in the previous video that it was weak to Triad Thunder, Volt Catfish's weapon, but now we're going to show off that it's also weak to Crushed Crawfish, as it blows up right now. And also Blizzard Buffalo. Keep in mind that for Blizzard Buffalo, if you use the underwater charged up version of the attack, which is that chunk of ice that raises up, it doesn't do anything to the mini boss. And the Volt Catfish upgrade, the Volt Catfish charge attack also doesn't really do much to the mini boss either. The only one of the charged attacks that could really do something to the mini boss is the Crushed Crawfish one. But again, the majority of these special weapons don't have really great charged variants in this game, so I would just use the regular versions. Here I'm showing off the ride armor platform in Blizzard Buffalo, since we didn't go over it in the previous videos. It's namely used to destroy the ice blocks that block your way to the heart tank. That can also be destroyed with Tunnel Rhino's weapon. Important to note that it cannot be destroyed with missile weapons. You have to use a ride armor that punches. If you're not using a punching ride armor, then it is not going to work for some reason. But if you use the Kangaroo ride armor or the Chimera ride armor, then you can punch and it will be just fine. Other than that, though, this section is really just for that. This is what I was talking about in the previous video, how some of the ride armor sections really just feel half-baked and just designed for a puzzle for a collectible, as opposed to an actual area with the ride armor in mind. Now we're going to move on and talk a bit more about Vile, because we also need to do some housekeeping on Vile before we get into the final fortress. Essentially, this is a playthrough where I've beaten 7 Mavericks. I have not fought Vile yet. Now I've beaten my 8th and final Maverick, in this case, Volt Catfish. We go through the cutscene where Doppler's Lab unlocks, and now, if I go back and revisit stages that have a warp capsule, the warp capsule will be blocked off / will disappear. You lose your opportunity to fight Vile in the Secret Factory after you defeat all 8 Mavericks. So if you haven't gone into the Secret Factory yet, then you will lose your opportunity to fight him after you defeat all 8 Mavericks. That's going to be important when we get to Doppler Stage 2. We'll talk more about that then. Back to Toxic Seahorse's stage, we're actually going to show off one more feature of this game. One more thing about Zero. Zero, for as arguably half-baked as he is, and I think I've been very vocal about how half-baked he's been in this game so far, he can be knocked out of commission and made unplayable for the rest of your playthrough if he dies. Whether by attacks or just falling down a pit or something, he can die, and he can be taken out of the action completely if that happens. Similar to Bit, similar to Bite, and similar to Vile. And Zero being taken out of commission will also change the will also change things up in Doppler's laboratory in stages 1 and 4, I believe. So a lot of variables to keep track of as we move into Dr. Doppler's laboratory. Zero's been taken out of commission. Now we're going to go back into the stage and finish it in this playthrough by defeating the last Maverick, which is, of course, Toxic Seahorse. And we're going to get a variant of the pre-Final Fortress cutscene. This is the first of the many things that can change in Dr. Doppler's laboratory, depending on if Zero, Bit, Bite, and Vile are active members of the story or not at this point. So the cutscene does change. It's literally a little bit shorter because all of X's dialogue is exactly the same and all of Dr. Kane's dialogue is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is that Zero is not here to give out his, I think, 2 lines of dialogue. So by that virtue alone, this cutscene is just a little bit shorter because Zero is not here to give out his additional lines. But everything Dr. Kane says is exactly the same. Everything X says is exactly the same, except, of course, that Zero is not there. This is all information that I'm going to reiterate, by the way, in the extras video, because the first segment of that video is going to be a long look at Dr. Doppler's laboratory and all the things that changes. But, basically all the things that I'll talk about there are going to be things that I talk about here. Without further ado, all of that housekeeping out of the way at last, we have gone through all 8 Mavericks. We have collected all the things except for the pink enhancement capsules, which will come into play in just a moment. It is time, finally, to enter Dr. Doppler's laboratory and go after the Mad Doctor himself, as well as Sigma, obviously. Welcome properly to episode 3. Dr. Doppler's laboratory has the best Final Fortress music in the initial SNES trilogy, I think. I went on and on in a previous video about how X3 has my favorite soundtrack in the original SNES trilogy, and Dr. Doppler's laboratory is a big reason why. I love the Dr. Doppler's laboratory theme. It's a fantastic track. I really love this. And I'm glad that it's used for both Stage 1 and for Stage 2. It's fantastic. The stage begins, as you'd expect, lots of spikes, lots of spikes and powerful enemies. The headgunner enemies are back to their red variants, and the green variants that we saw after beating Blast-Horn are gone. We see a section of a section where the walls were closing in, very similar to what we had a couple of times in X2. It's the first time it's happened in X3, but we had a section with the walls closing in on us. Enemies are no longer affected by the Blast Hornet being defeated thing, and now we're entering our first mini-boss for Doppler's lab. This is the Rex 2000, I believe. The big junk robot, as Zero will call him. Zero will, in fact, call him a big junk robot, and he'll declare that he's going to be stopping the collapsing ceiling. Because of the fact that Zero is here and Zero can be taken out of the story, as we just went over a couple of minutes ago, this is the first of the major factors that can change. So the Rex 2000 is weak to Frost Shield. It's also weak to Triad Thunder, as we'll see right now. It's very easy in and of itself to defeat. It only takes just a few hits with your special weapons to bring it down. Even with just your regular buster, it doesn't take that long. Defeating the Rex 2000 with Zero still in action and part of the story will lead to a very quick cutscene where Zero is warning X that Doppler's lab is going to be very, very dangerous, as if we haven't already proven that's going to be dangerous already, based on what we've just seen so far already. It's going to be very, very dangerous. And Zero, of course, is going to do his thing of scouting around. Don't worry, though, you can't actually switch over to Zero in Doppler's lab, and that's going to be very important as we move into Stage 2. But for now, we went over that Zero can be taken out of the story completely. And if Zero gets taken out of the story completely, then when you get to the junk robot in Dr. Doppler's laboratory, Zero will no longer come in to help you out, which means that this boss fight has an extra layer to it. So not only do you have to defeat the junk robot, which we'll show off right now because it's very easy to defeat with Triad Thunder or the Frost Shield, you also have to destroy this mechanism that is bringing down the ceiling. The mechanism is weak to Triad Thunder, and then you can just leave, and then that's it. You're all done. But let's go over a little bit more about the boss fight, because we see this collapsing ceiling. Let's see what happens if we let the ceiling collapse in on itself, because it's very interesting what happens if we just let the ceiling collapse. As you can see, just by the fact that the junk robot, the Rex 2000, is bigger than X, you can already imagine that it's going to be the first casualty of this collapsing ceiling. And in fact, it is. After a certain point, the Rex 2000 can't even move anymore, and then after a little longer, the collapsing ceiling will destroy the thing itself. But then, if Zero has been taken out of commission, you have to move quickly to destroy the collapsing ceiling mechanism. And if you don't move fast enough to destroy the collapsing ceiling mechanism, then the ceiling will come down low enough where X will in fact die. But of course, if this is a scenario where Zero has been saved and you allowed the collapsing ceiling to take care of the junk robot, then Zero, the fight automatically ends when the junk robot is destroyed by the ceiling, because Zero has already taken care of the mechanism that was making the thing collapse. Continuing on with Doppler Stage, there is so much to talk about. Mega Man X3 has so much stuff going on. One of the things that I like and also dislike about Mega Man X3 is just how busy it is. This section, you want to make sure you get to full health. So doing an air dash and grabbing this health pellet is a great idea. Using Triad Thunder to protect yourself from the enemies here, and also grabbing a Ride Armor to protect yourself further from the enemies so that any damage you take, it is not affected by your health bar. From this point onward, you want to make sure that X is at full health. You need it for the secret upgrade, for the first of 2 secret upgrades in Dr. Doppler's laboratory. Coming down here, we had the right armor is taking damage for us, so we are going to be A-okay. These spike balls can damage the right armor, but it can't destroy it outright. There we go. Now we just get off. We go down. And here is our first of 2 secret upgrades in Dr. Doppler's laboratory. This is the 5th pink enhancement capsule. This one is for the hyper chip. Previously, I misstated that the arm parts upgrade was the hyper chip, but this is the hyper chip. The arm parts thing was the hypercharge. This is the hyper chip. The hyper chip enhances all 4 of X's armor upgrades at once. So it's going to upgrade, it's going to enhance the head, the arms, the body, and the legs. All the things that we saw in the previous video and in this video that the enhancement chips do, they are now all doing at the same time, and X now has gold armor. This is the most powerful armor in Mega Man X3. In order to get it, you must make sure you reach that pink capsule at full health, and you have to make sure that you have not collected a single one of the other 4 enhancement upgrades. If you do, then that won't be there, and you won't be able to do anything. We'll see that more. We'll see that more after we finish the first stage. But for now, let's continue onward, because it's time for the Doppler Laboratories Stage 1 mini-boss. Or not the mini-boss. We already fought the mini-boss. The mini-boss was the Rex 2000. It's time for the Doppler Stage 1 boss, which is the return of Bit and Byte. Now, of course, by virtue of the fact that I went on and on in the previous video how Bit and Byte can die and be taken out of the story completely before you even get here, this is one of the many, many factors that changes. But for now, in this main scenario, Bit and Byte are alive. They combine together and form the God Car Machine Oenari. This is the first boss of Dr. Doppler's laboratory. Has a few attacks. Has a laser sword that it can do. Has a laser sword attack that it can do. It can also fire a punch at you, but it's going to show that off in just a little bit. Its weakness is Neon Tiger and Blast Hornet. Blast Hornet to a lesser extent, but Neon Tiger is its main weakness. Either one is fine, though. Using Blast Hornet or Neon Tiger will be okay. It also has this punch and attack where it can grab you, toss you up into the ceiling, and line you up for a retaliatory punch. If you get behind God Car Machine Oenari, it has a much higher likelihood of doing this attack right here, where it's going to create 2 orbs that home in on X. It's tough. It does a lot of damage. Even with the gold armor that I have, with the fully maxed out armor that I have for X, it does a lot of damage, so be careful. It is tough. It has very limited attacks. Again, Sword Strike, Punch, and then homing laser energy balls that come after you. Those are the only things that it can do. Not very mobile, but very, very powerful. Moving on, however, we went on and on about how Bit and Byte can die. So now let's take a look at what happens if you get to this boss fight and Byte is dead. So here we go. Byte has blown up. We defeated him with one of his weaknesses, which again were Neon Tiger or Tunnel Rhino. Returning to Doppler Stage 1, boss. Bit is alive. Byte is dead. Bit has some brand new dialogue to reflect the fact that Byte is in fact dead, but that Bit, who survived the first encounter with X, is ready for retribution. And all by himself, he transforms into God Car Machine Oenari. Kind of disappointing that we don't have like a new kind of that we don't have like a new boss in place, or just a rematch with Bit, considering how tough Bit is on his own normally. But whatever, it's still God Car Machine Oenari. It still does the exact same things: the laser sword attack, the punch, the homing energy balls, exactly the same fight. Moving on, if we go into a scenario where we kill Bit with one of his weaknesses, which again is Blizzard Buffalo or Volt Catfish. That's another thing, by the way. I wish God Car Machine and Oenari's weaknesses changed depending on if Bit was alive, Byte was alive, or if they were both alive. Anyway, Bit's dead in this scenario. Byte's alive. Entering the boss arena, you could probably already guess what's going to happen. Byte has dialogue reflecting the fact that Bit is dead and will somehow all by his lonesome, transform into the exact same boss that we've seen 2 times now. So here we go. He's transforming right now, and it is going to be, in fact, the exact same God Karmashino area that we saw 2 times now, unfortunately. Same exact fight. The bite version of this fight seems a lot more prone to doing the punch attack as opposed to the laser sword attack, but it does also do the laser sword attack and the homing thing. The bite version of the fight is just the exact same thing as the bit version of the fight and the bit and bite version of the fight. There's nothing new, nothing crazy to it, unfortunately. Would have been nice if we had some different fights or just a rematch with just bit and just bite. I don't know. It would have been kind of cool to have something different here instead of just God Karmashino every single time. But of course, we've also went over how we can kill bit, how we can kill bite. We can kill both of them in our playthrough. And if we kill both of them, then you will see as we approach the boss arena. Previously, the boss door was at the bottom, but now there is no boss door here. We have to go up, and going up will reveal a new boss door, and this boss door will lead us to a brand new Fortress Stage 1 boss. This, coming up right now, this thing right here, is the Press Disposer. Press Disposer is what happens if you kill Bit and you kill Bite. You have to fight this thing instead. It's tougher than I gave it credit for when I was playing, honestly. It has that attack which can grab you and bring you towards it, which can do lots of contact damage, even with the fully maxed out armor. The weakness is the head, but it's also able to be attacked at the trunk. Attacking the trunk does no damage to it, just does no damage to the Press Disposer, but destroying the trunk will allow you to have more free reign to attack the head. Meanwhile, we have that tube at the top that's dropping either junk robots or piles of junk. The junk robots that drops down can fire at you and do some damage, and of course the junk blocks can also do damage just by sheer collision as they fall down. I take a lot of damage in this boss. I don't do well with this boss at all. This boss is a lot tougher than I give it credit for. I think it's honestly a little bit tougher than God Karmashino Oenari, and it is your punishment for killing both Bit and Bite. It is a tougher boss for Doppler Stage 1. More unique boss, though. It's pretty fun. After you destroy the trunk, if you destroy the trunk, because you don't have to destroy the trunk to destroy this thing, but probably throughout the course of the fight, you will destroy the trunk. If you do, Press Disposer will unleash a vat of... will just rain down a bunch of acid. By the way, the spikes here... the spikes at the end don't kill you in one hit, but with the max armor, they do kill you. Even with max armor, they kill you pretty quickly. Not obviously with less than max armor and less than max health, you would lose pretty quickly. Anyway, the acid here dissolves anything that makes contact with it, so junk robots and cubes will dissolve automatically. The spikes don't kill you in one hit, but they can do lots of damage, and Press Disposer can't crush you to death, but it does do a lot of contact damage. Press Disposer is weak to both Neon Tiger and Tunnel Rhino. I would recommend using just your regular X-Bus to destroy the trunk, and then once the face is fully exposed for you to attack, use Tunnel Rhino instead of Neon Tiger. This is one of the few times where Neon Tiger is not going to be the best solution for a problem. Tunnel Rhino is going to be the best solution for a problem here, because Neon Tiger spreads its shots way too far, depending on how far from X those shots are. So Tunnel Rhino is going to be the best option for the Press Disposer. Moving on, though, we have beaten Doppler Stage 1. We now have the gold armor. I'm just showing off what happens when you revisit the stages with pink enhancement capsules that we didn't collect, but we have the gold armor. The pink enhancement capsules will, in fact, just disappear. If you reach Dr. Light's hyperchip location without full armor, then you will be unable to collect that the pink enhancement capsule. Again, you need absolutely full health. You need to make sure that you have no enhancements already equipped. That previous footage we saw was me going through the stage with the leg enhancement capsule. You need to make sure you have no enhancements. You need to make sure you have full armor and full health in order to get the gold armor. This is now Doppler Stage 2. So much stuff going on. So much to talk about. This is Doppler Stage 2. We see a very, very destroyed stage here, and we're going to talk about why it's destroyed a little bit later. For now, though, the good news is the stage as is, and I say as is pretty easy. The enemies here aren't so bad. They're things that we've seen before. The stage layout is pretty straightforward. For this section, you want to make sure you use Hawk, because you're going to have some wide gaps to cross here. It's a very interesting little little diatribe in aesthetics here for Doppler Stage 2 compared to Stage 1. How this one is all completely wrecked up, and the first one was all very crisp and new and clean and shiny and nice. But of course, Doppler Stage 2 is the subject to many, many changes, depending on your decisions in the main playthrough, depending on what you did and didn't do as you were fighting the 8 main bosses. The stage changes drastically. So now we're going to enter a mini-boss room. The mini-boss room at this point is completely empty, so you can just dash on through. This is just a nothing room if you have this version of the stage. Anyway, as I was saying before, reaching the hyper ship enhancement capsule in Doppler Stage 1, when you already have an enhancement equipped, like we saw in the previous footage with the leg enhancements, because I had the double air dash, or reaching it without full armor or without full health, you are not going to be able to get your hands on the Dr. Light enhancement capsule. It's very finicky, so you want to be you want to make sure that you meet all the requirements in order for that enhancement capsule to pop up in Doppler Stage 1. This is the worst part of Doppler Stage 2, I think. This is the slowest section. This is, I'm going to spoil right now, this stage changes pretty drastically depending on one specific factor. Except for this section. This section does not change at all. You just have to slowly go up and down. You have to just slowly keep climbing these spike walls with the assistance of these worms that can touch the spikes, but obviously you can't touch the spikes. Keeping Neon Tiger equipped to attack all of the flying turrets that come down. This is a very slow, boring section, and it's completely unchanged depending on which version of the stage you're playing, which is, I think, a weakness of the stage. I would have liked if one version of the stage rewarded you with the fast version of this, where there are no spikes here, or maybe only some spikes here, and you can do wall jumping instead of just this slow worm thing. This is a kind of little fun bit. You have to jump to the left and jump back to the right over on the same worm that you were on before. This is probably the hardest one to do, and I usually never get it without the leg enhancement upgrade. I need 2 air dashes for that. I'm not good enough to do that with only one air dash. Most of the time I would just collide and crash into the spikes, and that would be the end. And very frustrating because it's a very slow section. You have to do all that over again. Made to the boss room. No boss in here, so let's go into the second boss room that we have here. And now it's time to fight Vile. This boss fight in this version of the stage happens. This boss fight, this version of the stage, and this dialogue happens if you fought Vile at the secret factory and he got away, or if you just never went into the secret factory at all. You get this version of the stage and this version of the boss fight. The Goliath Ride Armor, which is Phase 1, is a much improved design over that kangaroo thing that he was using in the secret factory. It has quite a few attacks. It makes these little walls. It can dash punch. It has a big laser blast that it's going to do right now that does a ton of damage. It is weak to both Blast Hornet and Tunnel Rhino. Those are its 2 weaknesses. Either is fine. They're both weapons do fine in this fight, so use whichever one you want. It dashes. It shoots those little walls, and it can fire gigantic lasers as it chases you around the arena. A much improved design, does a ton of damage. This is a legitimately pretty difficult Phase 1. And as you can imagine, based on the fight that we had at Secret Factory, this is only Phase 1. This is a 2-phase battle with 2 full health bars. This boss is definitely one you need a sub-tank for. God Car Machine can probably get away with fighting without a sub-tank. Press Disposer, you probably should have a sub-tank because it's much more involved compared to God Car Machine in terms of being a boss. And the Goliath Ride Armor / Vile Mark II in Stage 2 is also a boss that you definitely want a sub-tank for. Phase 2, Vile does most of the same things that he did before. He still jumps, he still fires his little column of napalm fire towards X's direction, but he has 2 new attacks. Sometimes, instead of just firing his arm cannon as a series of shots, he will sometimes fire paralyzing shots that can hold X in place. And if they grab X, then that will open X up to be chokeslammed by Vile. But we'll see that a little bit later when I show it off. He's still weak to the exact same things that he was in the Secret Factory, which is Neon Tiger and Crush Crawfish. here is the paralyzing thing. It doesn't actually damage X, but it holds him in place for Vile to grab him and choke him and do a ton of damage that way. So here at this point, don't hold back. Use his weaknesses, whether it is Crush Crawfish or Neon Tiger. Either one is fine. The Goliath Right Armor, again, was weak to Blast Hornet and Tunnel Rhino, which is different from the first Right Armor, which was also weak to Neon Tiger and Crush Crawfish. Vile has the exact same dialogue here when you kill him as he did in the Secret Factory if you killed him in the Secret Factory, which is that he will haunt X to the day he dies. I already talked about how it's cool that Vile is a recurring baddie for X. How we're not going to see him again for a while, but at this point he has cemented his status as a recurring villain for X. That's great. It's a tough boss. I would recommend having a sub-tank for him. Absolutely. Without a doubt, make sure you have a sub-tank. But of course, we also went over how we could kill Vile in the Secret Factory, and we get that whole dialogue here about how he will haunt him to the day that he dies. If you kill Vile in the Secret Factory, a lot of things change with Stage 2, as compared to Stage 1, where there were only a few elements and factors that changed, the mini-boss and the main boss. Killing Vile and then defeating Doppler Stage 1 will lead to a drastically different version of Stage 2, a much more difficult version of Stage 2, because this laboratory has not been trashed by Vile in a tantrum because X apparently never fell for his trap or because X escaped his trap at the factory. With Vile already dead, we now can see Dr. Doppler's lab here in its full pristine glory, and just how much more dangerous it is. We have the turrets from Neon Tiger stage. We have more powerful versions of these robots that we saw, of these mechanoids that we saw in Toxic Seahorse's stage. They have two phases, because again, Mega Man X3 loves having enemies that have multiple phases and multiple things to them. These versions of the enemies can do two things. They can both fire lasers, just like the versions that we saw in Toxic Seahorse's stage. They can also fire little bombs. X3 loves enemies that do lots of things and have multiple phases to them, just like their bosses. At this point in the laboratory, it's fine. You know, we're dealing with the Final Fortress. It's okay for enemies to be like super tough. Like the fact that the headgunner enemies, those red turret enemies that were de-evolved after beating Blast Hornet are back to being fully powered up and fully evolved here in Doppler's laboratory. I like that. That's a nice attention to detail. Just, you know, highlights how dangerous Doppler's laboratory is supposed to be. This section is underwater section, so the frog armor is the only thing that works, but it doesn't even work for that long because there's such a giant gap there, you're not going to make the jump anyway. Frog armor has an underwater dash I never knew about. Link is in the description. Considering how little the ride armor is used, I never knew about this. Check it out if you want to. At this point, before we enter this mini-boss room, I am going to go ahead and switch over to Zero, because Zero is still alive in this particular playthrough, and if Vile is dead and Zero is alive, then Zero has the pleasure of actually entering a mini-boss room for once and actually getting to fight a mini-boss. It's great. You just need to make sure that Vile is dead by visiting the Secret Factory and finishing him off with your weakness, and then making sure that you enter the mini-boss fight as Zero. You have to enter the fight as Zero because you can't switch over to Zero when you're already in the fight. So you have to make sure you enter this fight as Zero, fight this mini-boss, which is called Mosquitos, and when Zero defeats it, something very similar to X1 will happen, where Zero is almost out of commission. X comes down to wonder what the hell is going on, and how the one thing that Zero was able to do is something that ended in almost his complete death here. This is the only other version of his death scene, of his being taken out of the story scene, I should say, that exists. There is the version that we saw earlier in the video where he's in the lab saying that his power system can't work and X has to go it alone. And there's this version where he dies specifically in Doppler Stage 2 mini-boss Mosquitos. X will be granted the Z-Saber, which is the final upgrade of the game. You don't really need the other upgrades to use the Z-Saber, but having all the upgrades when using the Z-Saber allows the Z-Saber to be treated as a projectile attack, which is going to be very, very useful. But, as we will see in just a little bit, by the way, Zero dying, I'm just showing off here that Zero dying in Doppler's lab. If Zero dies anywhere except for the Mosquitos boss, you always get that cutscene in the lab with Zero. Now I'm going to show off the mini boss as X Mosquitos and what it actually does, and then afterwards I'll show off getting the Z Saber without other upgrades. So Mosquitos is kind of weird. He's weak to crushed crawfish, just so we can get that out there. He just goes around absorbing color from these tanks, and then he will do some sort of elemental attack by unleashing the by landing on a different color. So now he's red. If he lands on blue or yellow, he's going to do something. He's going to do something. As you can see, he's unleashed some toxic. Some toxins in the air. He can also unleash columns of fire. And yeah, I mean, Mosquitos isn't really that. He also has a projectile attack. Occasionally, he shoots out with his tail, and he can also suck up X's health like a mosquito, as you would expect a mosquito to do. It's really a weird, nothing little boss. You will probably kill it long before it does almost any of this stuff. It is weak to crushed crawfish. You will probably defeat it long before it does most any of this stuff. It also fires. It can also leave that little acid trap there for exit if you get it to land in the right place. It is such rare behavior, and it's something that you're almost never going to see because it dies so quickly, either to Zero and his Z Saber, or to crushed crawfish, or just even to regular X Buster attacks. It is so weak and it dies so quickly. You're probably never going to see most of the stuff that Mosquitos does. It took like many minutes to actually show all that stuff. Anyway, continuing on with Doppler Stage 2, we'll take a look at the X Buster thing, at the Z Saber thing, I should say, later. For now, continuing on with Doppler Stage 2, the much more difficult version of Doppler Stage 2, now that we have gotten the Z Saber. It is a very powerful projectile upgrade. It is similar in stature to the Hadouken and the Shoryuken from X1 and X2, and the Shotoken from Extreme, I guess, to a certain extent. But it is not the game breaker one-hit death thing that the Hadouken and the Shoryuken were. Oh, excuse me. Had a little burp there. Maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. Depending on how well I edited it, maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. Anyway, the Hadouken and Shoryuken were one-hit kills. The Z Saber is not a one-hit kill for things, but it is very powerful, and we're going to see it in action. Not in this video, but in the extras video, you'll see it in action. This section remains unchanged, unfortunately. Depending on no matter which version of Doppler's Lab you do. I managed to get to that final snail without having to do the double air dash, but most of the time I do have to do a double air dash. That section with the spiked wall, unfortunately, remains completely unchanged, depending on regardless of whether Vile is dead or not. What does change, however, is the boss. With Vile out of the way, we get to fight Volt Kurgil. And this is a giant version of the mini-boss that we fought in Toxic Seahorse's stage. It's an underwater boss. Nice. It's weak to both Blizzard Buffalo and Volt Catfish. Has some missile attacks. Compared to Vile, which was 2 phases and, difficulty, and probably going to need to use a sub-tank for it, this thing has very limited attacks. Throws missiles. They can throw its little mechanoid claws at you. It also has one more attack that's more rare because you actually have to be high up in the wall in order to see it. But it does have one other attack. I believe I am going to put in the effort to show it off right now. It has this one other attack that you might never see, where it will fire out some energy balls from its top cavities right there. Oops. Interesting little thing. Its behavior you're probably never going to notice from this thing, because most of the time you're going to fight it from below, where it'll only do the missiles and the claw swipe and the claw throw at you. It's very easy compared to Vile. For Volt Kurgil, you probably don't need a sub-tank for it. And, compared to Press Disposer, this is a much easier boss. Basically, Doppler Stage 2, you get a hard stage and easy boss if Vile is dead, and you get an easy stage and hard boss if Vile is still alive. And of course, you get the opportunity to get the Z-Saber if Vile is dead. Here I'm showing off what I was talking about before, that you can get the Z-Saber without the other upgrades. So we're actually going to see X in a moment. He's not going to have his his golden armor. He doesn't even have the arm parts upgrade, but you can still charge it up to green, which rewards you with a faster Z-Saber charge, but it's de-incentivized because the Z-Saber attack is no longer a projectile. It's just a it's just a close range attack. So, you know, give and pull, pros and cons to getting the Z-Saber without the rest without the rest of the armor upgrades. But it's still as powerful as it was. It's just no longer a projectile attack, which makes it a little bit more useless against the final boss. But moving on, we've skipped the boss select screen because we know how it works. In Mega Man X, you can go ahead and you can, in fact, revisit stages in between every single fortress stage. Now we have our boss rush here. This capsule will give you health and energy. Enjoy the music. I'm going to be cutting in every now and again to let you know the weaknesses for every single boss. Blizzard Buffalo is weak to Blast Hornet. The capsule will automatically regenerate after every single boss fight. Blast Hornet has two weaknesses, Crush Crawfish to lesser effect, and Gravity Beetle as its main weakness. Volt Catfish is weak to Tunnel Rhino. Gravity Beetle has two weaknesses, to lesser effect Blast Hornet and to greater effect Neon Tiger. Tunnel Rhino is weak to Toxic Seahorse. Crush Crawfish is weak to Volt Catfish. Neon Tiger is weak to Crush Crawfish. Toxic Seahorse is weak to Blizzard Buffalo. You can't bring charges into boss fights. That's the only other thing I wanted to mention. Can't bring charges into boss fights, as you saw with the Toxic Seahorse. The music I used was from the westernized music that was used for the FMV opening of Mega Man X3. So that's cool. Here I'm just using the head upgrade to get my health back. I hope you noticed, by the way, that with most of the bosses in X3, hitting them with a weakness, not all of them, but most of them, they fall into a very predictable pattern, when you hit them with a weakness, which is why I wasn't using them for the main playthrough, because it makes some of the boss fights really, really, really boring and less exciting when they're moving so predictably around. So I didn't use them for their main fights, but I did use all of the weaknesses here in the rematch, so you can see every single one of the weaknesses in action and how they affect the bosses. Now, however, we reach the boss of Doppler Stage 3, and surprise, surprise, this is the room that we've been seeing in the cutscenes every now and again. It's Dr. Doppler. No more giant mechanoloids, no bit, no bite, no vial. No more tricks or traps. It's X versus the Doctor. Very similar to a scenario that we would see in any classic Mega Man series game. It's now time for X to fight the mad scientist. First, Doppler is declaring that X should hopefully team up with Sigma, because actually Sigma's kind of cool, and X is like, no, that's a terrible idea. Sigma's a friggin' lunatic. No one would ever want to work with that guy. At least not in their right mind, and we'll get into that later, I guess. For now, Dr. Doppler prepares that it's time for a boss fight. A boss fight against the Mad Doctor. Dr. Doppler is a very unique fight in the sense that this is a battle of patience taken to its extreme. Dr. Doppler has a very simple strategy. You already saw it. He fires a few shots, he charges, and that's it. He fires a few shots, then he's going to prepare himself to do a dash, a charge, and that's it. His weakness is Toxic Seahorse. If you hit him at any point when he is expecting it, he will create a force field, an energy field that converts the damage that you would have done and heals himself with it, which is why this is a test of patience. This boss fight's very easy. Again, he only does literally 2 things. And all you have to do is just wait until he charges when he can't when he can't anticipate you attacking him, and just do damage to him right after he charges. Because if you attack him at any other point, he's going to put up that green energy field that will convert your damage into health. Which is why this is a battle of patience. You just have to wait it out, let Dr. Doppler do his very slow strategy. I'm speeding up here because it's a very easy fight. It's a very nothing fight. You just have to wait for Doppler to do his strategy, and then you just attack him when he's open, and that's it. There's just nothing more to it. Just lob some energy balls, charges, and that's it. So while this fight is ending, I'll start talking a little bit more about the some of the story stuff that we learn here in X3. Namely, the whole Sigma virus thing. The viral aspect of becoming a Maverick really starts coming into its own in this game. I mean, it's already introduced as early as X2, but it's really coming into its own right now with the fact that we're just naming the fact that the main antagonist now is a virus. That Sigma's essence is, in fact, a virus that spreads and is becoming an epidemic in 21XX society. I really like that, but as we'll talk about when we get into the actual final cutscene of the game, I think that X3's story is really, really let down by how little it ties into the larger narrative. Like I made a big deal in the opening about how about putting in Sigma Virus's dialogue from the end of X2 about Zero supposedly being destined to work for Sigma and how he's the last of the quote-unquote Doctor's creations. And then this game, we just completely don't go back to that at all until the very end. And not even this end. By the way, we're in stage 4 now. I skipped the boss select screen again because we don't need to see it. We already know in the X series that in between stages you always go back to the boss select screen in between Final Fortress stages. It's the way it's been for every single X game so far, and I'll continue to be that way for the entire X series. I'm not going to bring attention to it anymore. This final stage, you want to use Blizzard Buffalo to charge up your to get your sub-tanks up to full. They aren't already. We see bodies of Sigma in the background, very creepy. This is a cutscene with Zero, so obviously this is a factor that can change if Zero is in action or not in action, depending on what you've done in the game thus far. If you've let Zero go down to Mosquitos, or if Zero went down in some other way, like I'm showing right now, then when you get to that point in the Final Fortress Stage 4, then Zero won't show up and nothing will be destroyed, and you just continue on your merry way as it is. Anyway, the ending. This game is really self-contained in a lot of ways, but then the ending just shoehorns in the bigger story of the Mega Man X series, and I don't like that. And we'll talk about that more when we actually get to the final credits scroll where X is contemplating, why people have to fight each other and all that stuff. Before we get to all that, though, we need to fight the final boss, which is, of course, going to be Sigma. By the way, the Sigma logo is back. We didn't have that this entire game. We only had the Doppler logo. Now we have the Sigma logo. Sigma, of course, manipulated Doppler. He infected him with his virus. Just as he infected all the other Mavericks, they were just laying low until it was time to strike. Sigma Phase 1, very difficult if you don't know what to do, because he can tear down your health in no time flat. He has a few attacks. He can fire flaming fireballs. He jumps from one side of the arena to the other. If you are in the if you're in the ground or in some place where Sigma can aim at you, then as he jumps from one side of the arena to the other, he will pause in midair to fire some extra fireballs back at you. If you are not in a position where Sigma can get a clear shot on you, he will just jump from one side of the screen to the other. His weakness is both Crushed Crawfish and Blizzard Buffalo. Never use Blizzard Buffalo against Sigma. You want to conserve Blizzard Buffalo in case you lose to Phase 2 of this final boss. That way you have a fast, reliable way of getting health back for your sub-tanks before you have to refight Sigma again, unless you get a game over, in which you can just go to another stage like Gravity Beetles to refill your sub-tanks. Always use Crushed Crawfish. Always hang out in the wall above Sigma, and always fire Crushed Crawfish in such a way where the bottom blade will always hit Sigma. That way, it is the safest version of Phase 1 that you can do. When he's at half health or lower, Sigma has his Desperation attack where he throws his shield Captain America style around the room in a figure 8 or an infinity logo. That's very difficult to avoid because it's very fast. Everything Sigma does is very fast, but if you use the Crush Crawfish weapon strategy where you just hang out in the wall above him, then you will take as minimal damage as possible, and you want to take as minimal damage as possible. Sigma is fast, he's furious, he can cut down your health very quickly, but you need to conserve as much of it as possible because you need as much of it as possible for Phase 2, which I will lose by the way, as a spoiler. That first phase was fast, was furious, but that was not the battle body that Dr. Kane was going on about in the beginning of the video, and that Doppler also mentioned. This is the battle body. This is Kaiser Sigma. This is Phase 2. This is one of the toughest bosses in the Mega Man X series. I'm going to die here. First of all, just spoilers. I'm not going to talk too much about it. This is one of the toughest fights in the Mega Man X series. It has no weakness. That's the first thing I'll talk about as we work our way back to it. Now that I've died, as we work our way back to it. The first thing I'll talk about is the fact that it has no weakness. By the way, I'm very happy that I died when I did because I didn't have to spend my time refilling my sub tanks. But if I could, by using Blizzard Buffalo or just the head upgrade, you can't follow Zero where he went. I'm gonna speed through the first fight with the first phase with Sigma. I'm gonna do much better with the first phase with Sigma because I don't have to worry about using Blizzard Buffalo to show off that. That's also a weakness for Sigma, but that it's not recommended. Anyway, Kaiser Sigma Phase 2 is one of the toughest bosses in the Mega Man X series, and that's partly due to the fact that it has no weakness. You can't use any special weapons on Kaiser Sigma. It is invulnerable. You have to use your X-Buster or the Z-Saber that you get from Zero in Doppler Stage 2, if you got it from Doppler Stage 2. In this playthrough, I don't have it, but in the extras video, you will see a version of the playthrough that I do, where I do have the Z-Saber, and you can see how Kaiser Sigma operates when you have the Z-Saber versus how you have to deal with him when he doesn't have the Z-Saber. If you don't have the Z-Saber, the only thing you can do is the X-Buster. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult because the only weak point that Sigma has is his teeny tiny little peanut head. It's very difficult to get a lock on that. Before we talk about that, though, let's talk about his attacks. He only has a few. He lobs out these little mines, those little blue mines, and he also lobs out missiles. The missiles do the most damage of anything. Technically, this laser attack that he's doing right now does more damage, but that laser attack does damage over time, whereas the missiles do very immediate damage in that instant, which is why I died so suddenly when I fought this thing the first time. It flies backwards, does a laser attack, shoots out some mines, then it will fly over to the It'll fly to the left side of the screen, lob some mines. Once it lands, it will fire missiles. It will either fire missiles one at a time, or it'll fire all 4 of the missiles at once. There are 2 variants of the missiles he can lob out, one at a time or all 4 at once. Then he will fly over to the right side of the arena. What he would do is laser attack either up high or down low, and keep lobbing mines at you all the while. He does not deviate from this strategy. He does not have a desperation attack. This is all he does for the entire fight. The best way to hit Sigma is by aiming a little bit higher than you think you have to. Always aim a little bit higher than you think you have to. If you're not hitting Sigma consistently, it's because you are not hitting him. It's because you're aiming lower than you have to. You always want to aim a little bit higher than you think you do for this fight. It looks like in many of these cases, I was lined up perfectly with Sigma, but you don't want to be lined up perfectly with Sigma in order to land your shots. You want to make sure that you are aiming just a little bit higher. Additionally, regular X-Buster attacks don't work. You have to use charge shots, whether it's the green charge, the bigger charge, the maximum charge. It doesn't matter which version of the charge you use. It has to be a charge shot. It cannot be the regular little lemon pellets. You have to use actual charge shots in order to connect with Sigma. Remember, always aim higher than you think you have to. That laser attack can be pretty devastating. It can remove up to half your health, but it does it over time, which means that you can escape it long before that blue purplish laser thing can properly finish you off. So it's threatening looking. It has a very scary sound effect, but it's comparatively not as bad as the missiles, which I think are the worst part of this fight. They do the most damage instantaneously compared to the mines, compared to the lasers, compared to even contact with Sigma. Anyway, always aim higher than you think you have to, and you will get to this fight no problem. I can't believe I actually got through this fight with without using a sub-tank. You want to make sure you bring in at least 2 sub-tanks for this fight. Ideally, you have all 4 filled up, but ideally you have all 4 filled up so that you can use 1 during Sigma Phase 1, and then 2 during Kaiser Sigma, or potentially 3 if it goes really, really badly. But I didn't even have to use any. I was very, very happy with my performance on the second one. Anyway, beat Kaiser Sigma, but Sigma is not dead because Sigma is not just a Reploid. He is a virus at this point. He's not just a Maverick. He is the Maverick virus at this point. He is the Sigma virus at this point. His existence transcends any physical body. So at this point, he is just back to his pure virus form. In Phase 3 of this fight, it's not really a fight. You just have to escape. Lava is going to come pouring up. You want to make sure that you don't get caught by the ceiling at any point, because that will instantly kill you, and dying here means that you have to do Sigma Phase 1 and Phase 2 all over again. The virus will attempt to make contact with you, and if it makes contact with you, you automatically come crashing down into the lava. But if you have at least 1 full sub-tank at this point, then you're going to be fine, because if you have at least 1 full sub-tank, you can use the sub-tank, and if you have the gold armor that we have here, then you're going to be even better than fine, because you're going to take less damage than normal, and just damage boost your way up that lava pillar. If you don't have the max armor at this point, the full-on third armor, then you're going to want to make sure that you practice dodging the Sigma virus as it charges at you. At this point, X is trapped. The virus is getting ready to possess X and see if it can merge with X. It probably wouldn't ever be able to actually do so based on what we saw in X2, but it's going to try, but not anymore, because Zero showed up with an antivirus from Doppler, an actual antivirus for the Sigma virus. Then at this point, after the damage has already been done, now we actually get an anti-Sigma virus program from Doppler so that Sigma can go away for a little while anyway. There's an alternate ending you can watch in the extras video. Let's talk about the story here. I really do like the story of X3, and it's translated much better compared to X2, which had all that prophecy nonsense and no mention of Sergei's potentially being Dr. Wily. X3 does a much better job of translating the story, but both the original Japanese version and the translation make the mistake, the fundamental mistake of not really tying this into the larger X franchise narrative, of which at this point, it's pretty obvious there is a plan for the larger X franchise narrative, because as we're going to see in this text here, the ultimate end game for the X series, at least at this point, the ultimate end game for the X series is X versus Zero, that will eventually see play out to its extreme in X5. And the fact that that is just not mentioned at all until here, in like the final 2 lines of text before we get to the credits, is very disappointing. and is emblematic of the fundamental issue of X3's story in that it doesn't even bother to tie into the larger X franchise narrative. But then here at the very end, we're going to see X realize what the end game of the X franchise is, because the writers are telling him to realize what the end game of the X franchise is. Something that isn't going to play out for a little while now, and something that was introduced very artificially and I think badly. Just here, the fact that it's just going to come up at the very end of this text that he's going to have to fight Zero at some point, and it's going to be a drag down, bitter fight to the very end. Which X2 does a good job of building up to, but X3 completely drops until this final line: to save mankind, he must destroy Zero. It's a very bizarre thing to drop at the very end. This game didn't need it. Anyway. Despite that one hiccup with the story, I think Mega Man X3 is pretty good. It is overall the weakest of the SNES trilogy. It is way too big and way too ambitious for its own good. And the thing at the very end that where we suddenly get the the return of the overarching plot where X has to fight Zero at the end of all this, very, very artificially inserted there. Not a fan of it. Overall, this game is fine. Weaker than X2, and X2 is weaker than X1, which is a shame. But thankfully, next time, the next main X game that we play, X4, is going to be a step up. So this is not going to be the overall trend for the X series, thankfully. Next time, though, we are going to take one more. We're going to take another detour into the sub-series with Mega Man Extreme 2. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. There is a collectibles guide, an extras video, all that good stuff as always. Enjoy. I'm Believer. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.